Young millionaire falls in love with older woman. And what she heard was just too cruel. It was a summer night in Los Angeles, hot enough to make the asphalt shimmer beneath Emily's hurried heels. The city was buzzing, cars lined up on Sunset Boulevard, lights glittering off shop windows, and an eager crowd pressing toward the Palladium Arena, where Noah Carter was about to perform yet another sold-out show. Emily wasn't a fan. At 39 years old and the owner of an art gallery in West Hollywood, her evenings typically revolved around mellow wines, brushstrokes, and silence. Yet there she was, among hysterical teenagers and resigned parents, all because of her love for Chloe, her 16-year-old daughter, who adored country music and everything Noah represented. Before the main performance, Chloe enjoyed the opening acts performing for the excited crowd. But Emily, who hadn't had a chance to use the restroom before arriving at the venue, desperately needed to find one. She asked Chloe to go with her, but her daughter refused, afraid of losing their spot. Chloe suggested she go alone, and Emily nodded, leaving her daughter happily enjoying the moment with her friends. Emily navigated the arena's perimeter, somewhat lost, weaving around security guards and sound technicians. Spotting a sophisticated white trailer with an open door, she didn't think twice and hurried inside, hoping to find a restroom. The interior was a world apart, immaculate, decorated in warm tones with panels of light wood, a leather armchair, and paintings scattered across the walls. One piece, in particular, caught her eye, a painting in navy blues and golds with expressionist strokes, which she would recognize from miles away. It was from her own gallery. But before she could admire it further, the bathroom door burst open. Noah stood there, barefoot, hair damp, his white shirt clinging to his body. He froze, surprised, eyes wide. "Who are you?" His voice came out hoarse, almost a whisper. "I'm sorry, my name is Emily. I just needed a restroom. I thought this was a public one." Emily stammered, already stepping backward. He studied her for 2 long seconds, then smiled slightly, one corner of his mouth lifting gently. "You can use it. It's okay." She hesitated but went ahead. When she stepped back out, expecting to find him annoyed or gone, Noah remained standing, holding a water bottle and looking directly at her. "Your name is Emily, but who exactly are you?" the young man asked softly. "I own an art gallery, and that painting is part of my collection. I'm surprised to see it here." "Really? That's amazing. This was the only painting that's ever made me feel something different. Something good, you know?" The conversation continued, casual yet captivating. Emily felt oddly comfortable, while Noah seemed to forget entirely about the concert happening outside. They shared the same space, yet existed in a different timeline, as if the clock had stopped just for them. When Emily finally glanced at her watch, she realized Chloe was probably worried by now. She apologized again for invading his privacy. "That was the nicest invasion that's ever happened here," he said, offering a faint smile. She smiled back, slightly embarrassed, and left. Chloe was waiting outside, and the night carried on as usual, at least for the crowd. But for Noah, something within him had shifted irreversibly. Before we continue, if you're enjoying the story, please subscribe to the channel and leave a like. It means a lot to me. Thank you so much. 2 days had passed since the concert. Emily kept trying to convince herself that the encounter had meant nothing special, just an odd little incident she could laugh about later with friends. Yet deep inside, a peculiar warmth lingered stubbornly in her chest, like someone's perfume that remains etched in memory long after they've gone. At the gallery, she paced rhythmically between the paintings. A new exhibit was about to be set up, showcasing works by emerging artists from Austin, bold brushstrokes and colors that seemed to shout silently from the canvas. But as much as she tried to focus, she couldn't. She found herself smiling absently, replaying that unexpected encounter. Then, without warning, the glass door chimed softly. Emily turned around naturally, expecting to see a regular client or one of the artists. But it was him. Noah Carter stood there, baseball cap pulled low, sunglasses, jeans, and a plain sweatshirt. Yet, despite his casual attire, his presence seemed luminous, radiating an energy that slowed down everyone nearby. She froze for a second. "I hope I'm not intruding this time," he said gently with a calm smile. "Definitely not," she replied, her throat suddenly dry. He walked slowly toward one of the paintings set up for the new exhibition, stopping silently before it for several moments, as if attempting to blend himself into the artwork. "When I first saw the painting that's now hanging in my motorhome, I thought it spoke about loneliness," he remarked without turning to her. "But after meeting you, I realized it's actually about connection, about chance encounters that change everything." Emily watched him, surprised by the depth and sensitivity behind the idol's image, and the picture she'd formed of him, built by tabloids and empty interviews, suddenly began to crumble in the most unexpected way. "But what brings you here now?" Emily asked. "I bought all of these new pieces," he replied, pulling a list out of his pocket. "I came to pick them up." She glanced at the list, 7 artworks in total, enough to make any curator question his intentions. He wanted them all, and it clearly wasn't about showing off. "Why?" she asked, still in disbelief. "Because they're yours. Because I want to look at them and remember what I felt that night. And maybe because I want more excuses to see you." Emily laughed, a nervous, awkward, yet genuine laugh. The ground beneath her feet suddenly felt less solid. "I don't usually go out with clients," she said, trying to regain some control. "And I don't usually fall for strangers who invade my restroom," he fired back, his half-smile becoming dangerously charming. She blushed. For the first time in years, Emily felt seen, not as a mother, not as a businesswoman, not even as a mature woman juggling endless responsibilities, just as Emily. "Do you prefer red wine or white?" she asked, internally questioning whether this was the right decision. "Either one, as long as I'm drinking it with you," he responded without hesitation. And just like that, with no promises or plans, their story began to unfold, brushstroke by brushstroke, woven from comfortable silences and glances that spoke volumes, far more than words could ever dare. The night in West Hollywood was cool, a gentle breeze drifting through the half-open windows of Emily's loft. The city below seemed distant, almost quiet. Inside, soft lights reflected gently in the glasses of red wine resting atop the rustic wooden table. Emily had prepared a small cheese platter but barely touched it. Noah sat on the sofa, one leg folded beneath him and the other stretched out. He studied the space as if trying to memorize every detail. The stacked paintings in the corner, the books arranged in charming disorder, the aromatic candles filling the air with lavender and hints of burnt vanilla. This was a home, not some magazine-perfect house, and that captivated him. Emily, seated across from him, tried to remain composed. She wore a simple black knit sweater, her hair casually twisted into a loose bun. Despite her uncomplicated look, there was something about her that made Noah forget about fame, tours, or crowds. "You know what's funny?" she said, gently holding her wine glass. "I've spent most of my life seeking stability, and you seem to live in constant motion. How does that even work in your head?" He paused for a moment, thoughtful. "I've been running, yeah, but I never really knew from what. Today, I think I finally understood I was running from myself," he said with raw honesty. Emily lowered her gaze. His vulnerability left her unsteady. "And now?" she asked softly. Noah leaned in slightly, moving closer with a calm that felt almost dangerous. He was just inches from her. "Now, I stop, because you make me want to stop." The silence that followed was heavy, but not uncomfortable. It was the kind of silence that came when two people stood at a crossroads, knowing that moving forward meant risk, sacrifice, and exposure. But staying where they were was no longer an option. He gently touched her hand. Emily didn't pull away, but her gaze flickered. She was battling her own logic, that inner voice shouting about age, judgment, reputations. But her heart was louder and deeper. "I shouldn't," she whispered. "But do you want to?" he asked in a low voice. She didn't answer with words. Instead, she leaned in, slowly, like someone approaching something sacred. Their lips met, first hesitantly, then with quiet surrender. A kiss that asked for no hurry, needed no proof. It was simply truth. Noah rested his hand against her face with almost reverent care. Emily felt her defenses crumble one by one. Her insecurities gave way to something rare, a feeling that she was finally where she was meant to be. When they pulled away, her eyes shimmered with unshed tears. "This changes everything," she whispered. "Or maybe it just reveals what was already here," he replied, his smile tender. Emily stood and walked to the window, her back to him, gazing out at the city lights. She knew that moment marked the beginning of something intense, and that it wouldn't be easy. But she also knew that in all her life, she had never felt something so deeply, so unquestionably real. The morning after the kiss, Emily woke up feeling different. The taste of wine still lingered faintly on her lips, but it was Noah's touch that remained strongest. Every gesture from the night before felt etched into her skin. A strange mix of fear and euphoria slowed her movements around the house, as if something precious had been left behind, and she didn't want to disturb it. Across town, Noah Carter was in the middle of a meeting with his manager when he suddenly drifted off, staring into space. His agent was talking about contracts, new tour dates, commitments in London, Paris, Amsterdam. But Noah's mind was somewhere else, lost in a loft that smelled like lavender and in a smile he couldn't seem to forget. The next evening, he showed up again. Not with flowers, not with rehearsed lines. He came with an improbable or maybe inevitable proposal. "Come with me on tour." Emily laughed, thinking he was joking. "Are you serious?" "Dead serious. Europe is beautiful on its own. But with you, it would be poetry. You said your daughter's leaving for her exchange program in 2 weeks, right?" Emily looked at him, her expression caught somewhere between awe and panic. Of course, the offer sounded dreamy. Who wouldn't fantasize about travel, art, wine, castles, and songs, all beside someone who made their heart race? But it also came with a landslide of risks. She was the type who made mental pros and cons lists. And right now, the cons were screaming. "Noah, you're 25. I'm 39. We live in completely different worlds. What will people say?" "I don't care what they'll say. We don't have to live our lives trying to fit someone else's mold. And if we need to, we'll do it in secret. No cameras. Just you and me. Until you're ready." Emily sighed. Logic said no. But the look in his eyes said everything she didn't know she needed to hear. There was honesty in him, and something even rarer, kindness. He wasn't pushing her. He was offering her space, space to feel, to exist, to love. She glanced at a photo of Chloe on the shelf, and she remembered, for the first time in years, her daughter had seen her smile with her whole heart again. "I'm not promising anything," she said at last, "but maybe I'll pack a small bag." The smile that spread across his face was pure sunshine. And right there, between imaginary suitcases, uncharted maps, and a love still taking shape, Emily decided. She didn't know exactly how, but she would go. Not to escape, not because of fantasy, but because, for the first time in a long while, she wanted to live a story without calculating every step. What would come next? She had no idea. But in that moment, life finally felt light. The first stop was Lisbon. Emily stepped off the private jet with a mix of nerves and excitement. It wasn't just the new city, with its cobblestone streets, yellow trams, and walls covered in painted tiles telling old stories. It was the feeling of being there with Noah, as if time had surrendered to their impulse. They wandered leisurely through the streets of Alfama, tasted pastéis de nata in a tucked-away pastry shop, and listened to a guitar playing a beautiful melody under a balcony. He held her gently by the waist, lightly, but consistently, as if to make sure she wouldn't drift away, not even for a second. In Paris, she watched him transform on stage. Noah was no longer just the bright-eyed, sweet-natured guy. He became a giant. The crowd screamed his name, and he sang as if every verse carried a heart that had been torn open and stitched back together. Emily, quietly watching from backstage, was deeply moved. So many of the lyrics felt like they were written for her or maybe even about her. Later that night, at the hotel, he played guitar just for her on a balcony overlooking the illuminated Eiffel Tower. No song was rehearsed. He simply sang what he felt. Emily couldn't put it into words, and maybe that was for the best. Some things, after all, are meant only to be lived. In Venice, they got lost on purpose. They hopped on a random vaporetto and strolled down narrow alleyways like two love-struck teenagers. Noah bought a golden carnival mask and placed it on Emily's face. "Now you're a walking masterpiece," he said, teasing, but his eyes held sincere admiration. She laughed, a little embarrassed, but let him take pictures with his analog camera. He told her he didn't just want to capture her image. He wanted to capture how she made him feel. Emily found it a bit over the top, but it made her feel alive, desired, and, for the first time in many years, completely free. In Barcelona, they had a fight. It was a small, almost silly argument about an interview Noah had canceled so he could spend more time with her. Emily felt guilty. She said she didn't want to be a burden, that he had a career to protect. He, frustrated, shot back that his career was just a part of his life, but she was everything that truly mattered. There was silence, then a long embrace, apologies from both. The argument didn't drive them apart, it brought them closer. They realized they were learning how to live together, how to adjust, how to love through imperfections. In the days that followed, their kisses grew deeper, their conversations more vulnerable. They spoke of childhoods, fears, losses, dreams, failures. Emily shared about her father's early death, about the paintings she used to hide as a little girl at 8. Noah admitted he sometimes hated fame, that it was all too loud. That with her, everything became quiet and good. And so, between cities, concerts, museums, wine glasses, and tangled sheets, their love bloomed like a garden with no fences. Wild, genuine, unstoppable. They were no longer just an older woman and a young singer. They were two once broken hearts, now beating in perfect sync. But the world wouldn't stay quiet for long. It was a warm night in Rome, and Trastevere looked more enchanting than ever. The cobblestone alleys, strung with hanging lights between ancient buildings, pulsed with life and distant music. Noah and Emily walked hand in hand, almost invisible among tourists and couples laughing at sidewalk cafes. He wore a low baseball cap and she wore a light white linen dress. They didn't look like a celebrity and an art gallery owner. They looked like two lovers in a foreign city, protected by a language that wasn't theirs and the illusion of anonymity. They stepped into a tiny restaurant tucked between narrow streets, with only 7 tables. The owner recognized them, barely, but discreetly led them to a private corner by an open window, where the scent of rosemary and freshly baked bread drifted in. During dinner, Emily smiled more than usual. In a casual moment, Noah leaned in and kissed her bare shoulder. She closed her eyes for a second, silently. It wasn't about vanity or desire. It was about presence, about being touched with tenderness, about being chosen. Across the street, hidden in the shadows, someone was watching through a powerful lens. The click was subtle, no flash, but within 48 hours, the image, Emily and Noah laughing together, his hands cradling her face just before a kiss, was splashed across celebrity websites, tabloid blogs, and social media feeds in multiple languages. 25-year-old country star spotted with older woman in Rome. Who is the mysterious woman who stole Noah Carter's heart? Teen heartthrob involved in secret romance with mom of a teenager. Emily woke up to her phone vibrating nonstop. Messages from acquaintances, questions from journalists, endless notifications. The headlines ranged from curious to cruel. Social media was divided between hopeless romantics and merciless critics. Her age became a headline. The wrinkles she barely noticed in herself were now proof. They said that she wasn't right for him. Noah, on the other hand, seemed unfazed. "We knew this could happen," he said, gently stroking her face as she held back tears. "But it doesn't change what we have." Emily didn't answer right away. She was drowning in a whirlwind of emotions she hadn't felt since her youth. Shame, fear, vulnerability. She wasn't afraid of being with him. She was afraid of being humiliated for it. Afraid of how it might affect her daughter. Afraid that the love they had nurtured so carefully was now on the verge of being crushed by brutal exposure. "I don't want to be a burden on your career," she said, her voice breaking. "I knew this could happen, but knowing isn't the same as feeling it." Noah held her hand. "You're not a burden. You're my balance." But in that moment, as beautiful as the words were, Emily felt the ground shift beneath her. For the first time since she'd joined the tour, she wished she were home, in silence, far from the world's eyes. The wound was open, and judgment was seeping in. The flight back to Los Angeles felt endless. Emily spent nearly the entire trip staring out the window, even though all she could see were clouds. Noah tried to talk to her, but she was somewhere else, somewhere deep inside herself, where fear echoed too loudly to let anything else in. By the time they landed, jet lag was the least of their concerns. Her gallery, once a quiet refuge, had a flooded inbox. Some loyal clients had sent kind messages, but others questioned her publicity, as if loving someone younger was somehow inappropriate. One reporter even left flowers at the door with a card that read, "Care to share your side of the story?" But that wasn't what hurt the most. What truly shattered her came from inside her own home. Chloe returned from her exchange program 3 days later. As soon as she walked through the door, she hugged her mother tightly, but Emily felt the hesitation. In her daughter's eyes, there was more than just longing. There was doubt. "I saw everything, Mom. I saw the photos, the comments. Everyone saw." Emily swallowed hard. "Are you mad at me?" Chloe shook her head, sat on the couch, and took a deep breath. "No, but I was scared. You shouldn't have kept this from me. People at school are making fun of me. They say you're using his fame, that you're trying to be young again. It's cruel. They talk like you're some kind of joke." The words cut through Emily like knives. She wanted to be strong. She wanted to say that none of it mattered, that love was bigger than all of this. But deep down it hurt. It hurt to see her daughter, her greatest priority, being pulled into a storm she never chose. That night she couldn't sleep. She watched old interviews of Noah, scrolled through every corner of the internet, reading what she shouldn't have. Comments calling her too old, a gold digger, a joke. Others, more subtle, questioned his masculinity for being with someone outside the norm. It wasn't just about her. It was about him too, and that tore her apart. Noah, in his way, kept trying to protect her, with sweet words, with promises that the storm would pass, that what they had was stronger than any headline. "It's not about surviving the criticism," she told him, her voice worn. "It's about watching my daughter suffer. I can take it, but she doesn't have to carry this cross for something that's mine." Noah stepped closer and gently held her face in his hands. "Then let me take care of this. Let me protect both of you. We can disappear for a while. You, me, and Chloe. Away from everything." Emily looked into his eyes and saw a man. Not the idol, not the star. Just a man in love, ready to face the world for her. But that made it even harder, because she knew that the more he fought, the more exposed he'd become, and the harsher the world would be. Her pain was now split between two loves, the man who awakened a new version of herself, and the daughter who was her essence, her greatest legacy. She stood at a crossroads. Hold on to a love that felt pure, but came with collateral damage, or let it go to protect what she loved most. That night, she cried alone in the shower, her body trembling under the weight of a contradiction, loving too much to stay and too much to walk away. That morning, the Los Angeles sky was gray, almost conspiring with the silence that filled Emily's home. She made coffee without appetite, stirring her cup absently as Noah sat at the table, watching her every move like he was trying to memorize the last traces of the makeshift routine they had built together. The past few weeks had been exhausting. The exposure, the cruel comments, the suspicious stares in galleries and cafes. Everything had become a weight she hadn't seen coming. But the worst of all was watching Chloe grow more withdrawn, more distant, more unsure of herself. Emily recognized that look. It was the same one she had carried in her youth, trying to belong in a world that always judged her. The night before, Chloe had cried after hearing classmates laugh at her mother in the school hallways. Emily heard her sobbing, walked into her room, sat beside her, and held her close. That was the moment she made her decision. Now, standing in front of Noah, her chest ached like it was made of cracked glass. But her voice came out steady. "We need to stop, Noah." He looked up slowly. He didn't ask why. He already knew. But still, his expression silently begged her to say something different. "I love you," he said. "And if you love me, this can't be how it ends." Emily sat down across from him, gently taking his hand. Her eyes were filled with tears, but she didn't look away. "Precisely because I love you, because you're young, brilliant, generous, and you deserve to live your life without carrying this guilt. And because I can't watch my daughter suffer anymore over something that should have been beautiful. I'll give it all up. The career, the shows, everything. For you. That would be even crueler, Noah. I don't want to be the woman who pulled you away from your dreams. And I can't be the mother who puts a romance above her daughter." He stood up abruptly, walked over to the window, ran his hands through his hair, visibly torn. Then, turning to her, eyes red, he asked with a trembling voice, "What if I promise to wait until Chloe graduates? 5 years. If I promised that, would you wait for me too?" Emily hesitated. 5 years. An eternity. But the love she felt for him still pulsed too strongly for her to say no. "I can't ask that of you. You're free. Go explore the world. Meet other people. Live. But if someday, when everything's calmer, you still feel the same, I'll be here." Noah embraced her like he could pause time with a touch. They stood there in silence, for minutes that felt like days. He took a deep breath and rested his forehead against hers. "I'll wait as long as it takes." Emily didn't respond, because words were far too fragile for that moment. She just held him tightly, feeling her heart shatter into 1,000 tiny pieces. He left that afternoon, without looking back, and she, alone in the living room, listened to the door close as if the world itself had just ended a chapter. That day, she returned to the gallery. She turned on the lights, powered up the sound system, played a soft instrumental song, and for the first time in a long time she cried without fear of being heard. The months passed like a polite but persistent guest. Emily threw herself back into the routine of the gallery. She began painting again, something she hadn't done since her youth. She welcomed new artists, scheduled exhibitions, and dove into curating as if trying to rearrange her own soul. Chloe, on her end, was slowly healing. The teasing at school had faded. And now, she saw her mother's story with new eyes, less embarrassed, more empathetic. But it still hurt to know that her mother had given up a great love. So one day she decided to call Noah. They spoke for a long time, and Chloe told him he should try again. She knew how much her mother loved him, and for her it was okay now. Noah, even from afar, remained a constant presence, though invisible. From time to time, Emily caught herself listening to his new songs. There were lyrics about impossible love, about long silences, about promises that time couldn't erase. Songs that she knew without a doubt were about them. Then, on a quiet Saturday afternoon, the gallery's doorbell rang. Emily was sorting through a catalog of artists when she saw the silhouette outside. Opening the door, she didn't find journalists or clients. Just a delivery guy, young, with his cap turned backward. "Delivery for Emily Harper," he said with a smile. "That's me," she replied. The courier retrieved something from the car. A bouquet. Not just any bouquet. It was a majestic arrangement, wrapped in handcrafted paper, made of peonies, lilies, and sprigs of lavender, the same scent from the candles she used at home. Tied to it was a small note, fastened with a linen string. Emily opened it with trembling hands. "I know we said goodbye, but some loves don't know how to stay buried, and bury us instead, if we don't live them. If you still feel what I feel, meet me where it all began. Tonight, at 7 p.m. Her heart pounded like a drum. She looked at the clock. It was 5:10 p.m. At exactly 7 p.m., Emily quietly parked behind the Palladium Arena, the same place as that first concert months ago. The lights were off, no show scheduled. But one of the side gates was slightly ajar. She stepped inside cautiously. The place was empty, except for a single beam of light coming from the white motorhome, parked exactly where it had been on that improbable night. The door was open. Emily took a deep breath and climbed the steps. Inside, everything was still. A vintage record played softly in the background. A familiar painting hung on the wall, the same one from her gallery, the first thread that had ever connected them. Then she heard footsteps coming from the bathroom, and even before she saw him, she felt him. Noah appeared. "I couldn't wait 5 years, my love. These past few months have been really hard," he said softly. Emily felt her whole body tremble. "I spoke with Chloe. She said she supports you. She said we shouldn't live in other people's shadows. I fought this feeling, Emily. But some things, you just don't win against. You're one of them." She tried to hold back her tears, but it was too late. "Do you think we can make it? Why are you doing this to me?" She whispered. "Because waiting any longer would be denying life. And because I love you, completely, with your story, with your daughter, with your fears, and with that quiet bravery you carry like armor." Noah knelt down. From his pocket, he pulled out a small box, simple, wrapped in navy blue velvet. Inside was a delicate ring with a soft, clear stone, something as graceful as she was. "I'm not asking you to marry me. Not now. I'm not asking for anything you're not ready to give. I'm just asking for a chance to continue our story, one chapter at a time. Should we try again?" Emily, through tears, smiled. It was the smile of someone who had suffered, but survived. Of someone who had loved and never stopped loving. "Yes," she murmured. "One chapter at a time." They embraced there, in the same motorhome where it had all begun. And in that embrace, there was a reunion with time, with fate, with the certainty that some promises don't come with expiration dates. The news spread in a matter of hours. Emily Harper and Noah Carter had been spotted together again, leaving a bookstore in Venice Beach hand in hand. There were no public kisses, no rehearsed poses. Just two calm faces walking side by side, as if they could finally breathe. But for the media, that was enough. Is he back with her? Noah Carter rekindles romance with art curator in her 40s. Has she bewitched him again? The comments started flooding in. Gossip sites resurrected their ridiculous polls. Do you approve of this relationship? Divided fans waged virtual wars, while influencers chimed in without the slightest nuance. But something had changed. This time, Emily didn't hide. She agreed to appear on a cultural podcast she had always declined in the past. The conversation focused on contemporary art, but inevitably, the host asked about her personal life. She took a deep breath, adjusted the microphone, and answered, "Yes, I'm with Noah. And no, there's nothing wrong with that. If I were 20 and he were 40, no one would say a word. But when the roles are reversed, everyone acts like it's odd. That doesn't say anything about our love. It says a lot about how much we still need to grow as a society." The quote went viral. Many women, artists, professionals, and everyday people rallied behind her online. They created hashtags, shared their own similar stories, and broke the silence they had once carried with shame. Noah, for his part, began publicly defending their relationship. In an interview with Rolling Stone, he said clearly, "Emily isn't a phase or a fling. She's my choice. And if I had to sing for 1,000 people or just for her in the quiet of a living room, I'd choose her every time." But the criticism didn't disappear. Some sponsors threatened to pull contracts. Younger fans sent angry messages, claiming he had ruined his image by being with someone so mature. Even a former tourmate posted a passive-aggressive comment, implying that Noah was being manipulated. Emily read it all. There were nights she cried again in the shower. Days she almost picked up the phone to say maybe it was better to start over alone. But Noah always noticed, always showed up, with silence and presence, two of the most loving gifts anyone could offer. One day, as they were leaving a restaurant, a reporter shouted, "Emily, don't you think you're holding back his career?" She stopped, turned around with grace, smiled not arrogantly, but with quiet strength. If loving someone can ruin a person's career, maybe the problem isn't love. The crowd fell silent. That day, Noah looked at her like he was seeing the woman of his life. And Emily finally understood that their love no longer needed to hide. Because it wasn't fragile. It wasn't a fleeting fever. It was a conviction, shaped by time, hardened by pain, and illuminated by a daily choice: to stay. Chloe had always been a strong teenager. Smart, sarcastic, with a keen eye on the world. She'd inherited her mother's love for the arts, and somehow, even while still growing, carried the same sensitive soul. But no handbook prepares a 17-year-old girl to watch her mother's personal life dissected like a scandal on the cover of a tabloid. In the first few weeks after Emily and Noah went public, Chloe seemed fine. She said she was happy for her mom, that love is love, and people will always talk, but her composure started to crack in the details. She began coming home earlier from school, avoided any mention of her mother's boyfriend, and slowly stopped attending events with them. Emily noticed it all, carefully, silently, but it was on a Wednesday afternoon that reality hit like a muffled blow. Emily came home early and found Chloe crying in her room. She was crying quietly, face buried in her arms. The sight shattered Emily in a way that couldn't be undone. "What happened, sweetheart?" she asked, kneeling beside her. Chloe tried to hide it, but she was falling apart. "They laughed at me, the girls at school. They said I was the daughter of the woman who bought the singer, that he's only with you for fame. One of them printed a photo of you two and taped it to my locker. It said, 'New pop stepmom.'" Emily felt the blood drain from her face. Guilt, rage, helplessness, but above all, pain. That deep, maternal ache. Chloe didn't deserve this. No teenager should have to carry the weight of choices that weren't their own. "I don't care about them, Mom," Chloe said through sobs. "I just want it all to stop. I want them to forget about us." Emily pulled her into a tight embrace, her own eyes filled with tears. "I never wanted this for you, my love. Never. I thought I could protect you, love someone without hurting you. I don't blame you, I swear, but it still hurts." That night, Emily wandered through the house alone, barefoot, the cold floor grounding her with every step. She replayed every moment from the past few months, every laugh with Noah, every embrace, every second where, for the first time in years, she had felt whole again. But she also saw her daughter's face, small, curled up, wounded by a cruelty that had no name, No face, but was relentless. That morning, the sun took its time to rise. The city seemed suspended in a thin mist, as if even time itself were hesitating. Emily woke early but didn't get out of bed right away. She lay there, eyes fixed on the ceiling, feeling the weight of a decision that had been quietly growing inside her. She knew what needed to be done. She'd rehearsed it 1,000 times in her mind. But the thought of speaking the words still felt unbearably cruel. To love and yet say goodbye, as if love were a blessing that could only exist in hiding. Her daughter wanted her to be happy, but she was too young to carry the burden of the brutal exposure that their relationship brought. And Emily, before anything else, was a mother. The next day, she met Noah at her house. He was cheerful, excitedly talking about a new song, a trip he was planning. But the moment he looked at her, he knew. Emily's eyes were tired, sad. She welcomed him with warmth, but her heart was in ruins. They sat on the living room couch, where they had laughed, talked, and held each other in quiet moments. But now a heaviness filled the space between them. He felt it, and he knew even before she said a word. "You're going to break up with me, aren't you?" he asked. No pretense, his voice already cracking. She lowered her gaze. "It's not because I don't love you, Noah. It's because I love you too much." He stood up, walked toward the window, trying to hold himself together, but his breathing betrayed the storm inside. "I'll disappear from the media. I'll change everything. Move to another country. Leave it all behind. If it makes your life and Chloe's go back to normal, I'll do it." "But you can't stop being who you are," Emily said, her voice low but steady. "And I don't want you to. I fell in love with you, the man, the artist, everything. And it would be unfair to ask you to dim your light just to fit into my life. Even more unfair to hold you back from everything the world still has to offer you." He stepped closer, kneeling in front of her. "Do you want me to wait? Just tell me. Because if you say so, I'll wait. 5 years, 10 years, however long it takes. I'll wait." Emily cupped his face gently, her eyes filled with tears. "No," she said softly. "I want you to live, to love again, if that's what life brings. To find someone who can be with you without fear, without conflict. And maybe one day," her sentence trailed off, unfinished. The kiss they shared in that moment wasn't a goodbye. It was gratitude, pain, a silent promise. A kiss between two worlds that touched briefly, yet deeply enough to mark a lifetime. Noah left that night. Emily stayed in the living room until the sound of the door faded into silence. Then she cried, not from regret, but from the physical absence of something she knew still existed. A love that hadn't died, just stepped back in order to survive. 5 years passed, an eternity for those who wait, but also a generous stretch of time, enough for wounds to heal, for identities to settle, for the world to shift and soften toward what once seemed unacceptable. Emily was now 44. Her hair was shorter, dyed a deep chestnut brown. With silver strands she no longer tried to hide. Her gallery had grown, more rooms, new artists, invitations to international events. She had become a respected name in the contemporary art world, yet never abandoned her quiet, grounded essence. Chloe had graduated high school, completed an exchange program in Berlin, and was now studying art history in New York. The bond between mother and daughter had never been stronger. Built on scars and understanding, there was mutual admiration, a quiet, resilient respect. And Noah? She didn't know. On purpose. She'd stopped following the news, interviews, his new releases. She had chosen not to feed the habit of loving from afar, because she knew to truly let go, she had to let him go completely. But fate, as always, had a peculiar sense of humor. It was a Tuesday afternoon in the fall. Late in the day, Emily was upstairs at the gallery, organizing a new exhibit. The space was quiet, filled only by a soft melody playing in the background. A new song, recently released, that one of the interns had put on. The voice was familiar, warm, melodic, carried an echo from the past. Suddenly, she heard steady footsteps on the wooden floor. She looked up without expecting much. And then she saw him, Noah, standing there, wearing dark jeans, a gray button-down, hair a little longer, beard neatly trimmed. He looked more grounded, more grown, more whole. But his eyes were exactly the same. Emily's paintbrush slipped from her hand. "You?" she whispered. He smiled, restrained, but with that unmistakable sparkle she had never forgotten. "I told you I'd wait as long as it took." The world seemed to stop. The noise from the street outside faded. The voices of the staff vanished. It was as if, in that moment, only the two of them existed, as if time hadn't come back to repeat the past, but to rewrite the future. Emily walked toward him slowly, like someone afraid it might all be a dream. When she reached him, she looked into his eyes for several long seconds. "Why now?" she asked. "Because now you're free, and so am I. Because Chloe is okay. Because I'm no longer the boy who needed to prove I loved you. And because, even after all these years, it's still you." She cried, not from despair, but from relief, like someone finally finding home after wandering for too long. And then, without asking permission from the past, or fear, or lost time, she embraced him. A long, deep embrace, full of silence and new promises. And there, in the middle of the gallery, surrounded by paintings and sculptures, they kissed, as if not a single day had passed, and as if every day had been worth it just for the chance to live that exact moment. The days that followed Emily and Noah's reunion weren't an explosion of euphoria. They were gentle, almost quiet, as if both of them now understood that mature love doesn't need to prove itself. It simply exists. There was no rush, just intimate dinners, evening walks, conversations that stretched for hours. It was like picking up a dance that had been paused, without needing to relearn the steps. For the first time, they were free of fear. Chloe, now a young woman, supported them with grace and pride. She had come to understand that her mother's love wasn't a threat to her life. It was, in fact, an example of courage. "You too defied time," she said one evening at a family dinner. "You proved that love lasts, that it can survive a storm. That taught me more than any class ever could." Emily and Noah decided to go public with their relationship. Not with a formal announcement, but as a continuous choice to live without hiding what made them happy. They appeared together at an art exhibition opening in San Francisco. He introduced her as his partner, no labels, no defenses. She introduced him as the one who brought me back to life. Public reaction, as always, was mixed. But this time, Emily didn't bend. She gave interviews, participated in a panel about ageism and mature love. She spoke with firmness, not bitter, but clear and assured. "If I were 30 and he were 44, we'd be celebrated. But because I'm the older woman, I became a punchline. It's time to flip the narrative. Love has no age. Prejudice does." Her words echoed. Several news outlets highlighted her stance. TV programs invited her on air. But she chose not to become a symbol or an activist. "I'm just a woman who chose to love without asking for permission," she told one journalist. Years passed. The relationship blossomed. Not without its challenges, but with maturity. Noah kept writing music, and many of his most profound songs now carried a new lyricism, a reflection of the life he shared with Emily. One in particular became an unexpected anthem, a soft ballad about two hearts that found each other at different times, but beat in the same rhythm. Emily, meanwhile, expanded her gallery. She created an exclusive wing for artists over 40. She named it Tempo Justo, right time. She said it was a tribute to everything that blooms when we stop rushing. They never married, never wore rings, but they made a quiet pact to live it all until the end, with respect, presence, and laughter. On their birthdays, they exchanged letters. Not text messages. Letters. Handwritten. And one of them, carefully tucked away in Emily's drawer, read, "You were my pause in the middle of chaos, my perfect note in the melody. You didn't arrive too early or too late. You arrived when I had learned to recognize you." And so, between lazy breakfasts, quiet travels, candlelit dinners, and Sunday afternoons filled with silence and soft touches, they proved, not to the world, but to themselves, that when love is real, it doesn't follow a calendar. It just needs the courage to be lived. And when life began to slow, when their hair turned fully gray and the wrinkles etched maps across their faces, they were still there, not as the ones who defied everything, but as the ones who, at last, found rest in the love they chose to live. Because time may take many things, but never what was true. Now that we've reached the end, tell me what you thought about this love story. Do you know anyone who's ever been judged for loving someone outside of what society considers normal? I'd love to hear your thoughts on it. And don't forget to let me know where you're watching this video from. I'll be waiting for you in the next story.